we've started doing a lot of education, both to our customers and our customers' customers, about what is the true cost of a pint and what are you paying for, where we can break down the costs of the average cost of a pint, break it down and show how much money is making it back to the farm, and then comparing that to a crop like soy and saying, let's say that a barley farmer made soy profits. So if you were to pay barley farmers a livable wage, a profitable value for that crop, when you amortize that all the way back up to the pint value, it's less than $1 difference that they're paying for the pint. So at the end, what's the difference between a cheaper, let's say $7 pint and a craft pint that supports local? That's an $8 pint. It's that strength of the local supply chain, the local agriculture. It just strengthens everything. And we're out there proving that local also means quality.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to The Growth Shift. Thanks for joining me today. Today, I'm excited to welcome Ian Goering, the Director of Operations at Blue Ox Malthouse. Thanks so much for joining me today, Ian.
Thanks for having me.
Sure, my pleasure. Could you please just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do for Blue Ox Malthouse?
Yeah, so my name's Ian Goering. I've been working in the beer industry in Maine and New Hampshire for about the past 15 years. In my current role at the Malthouse, I'm the Director of Operations, so I really focus on everything that happens within the four walls of Blue Ox. I'm making sure that the team and equipment and everything is running on our end, so that way the sales guys can go out and make whatever promises they want and everything's getting fulfilled.
Fantastic. Could you tell us a little bit about what a malt house does?
Yeah, so malt houses are kind of like the missing link between farms and breweries or distilleries. So malt is the primary ingredient for beer and whiskey, but generally speaking, you can't just take barley or wheat from the farm and make beer out of that. It needs to go through this value-added step called malting. There's kind of two ways to malt. It's called the old way and the new way. Most people are going to do it the new way, where the benefits are you can make a ton of malt with very few people. Doing it the old way, it's considered a better quality product, but it's really labor intensive. We do it the old way, and we're currently the largest we like to say North America, but really outside of Europe, we're the largest malt house that's doing things the old way. And we're supplying most of the breweries and distilleries in the Northeast.
It's amazing. How did you get started with Blue Ox?
So I was actually one of Blue Ox's first customers. I was working at a little brewery in southern Maine when Blue Ox first opened up, and we were one of the early adopters of them. So I had been a customer for a good decade plus when I first started talking with Joel, the owner and founder of Blue Ox, seeing if it would be a good fit for me.
Fantastic. And what does a typical day look like for you at Blue Ox?
So I generally come in and check in with the production team and see if there's anything that I need to know about that's going on, any equipment failures or delays or whatever that might be. I've got a really good team. It's usually, hey, we've got it, and just how's everybody doing in the morning. I then spend a lot of my day talking with customers. We do a lot of customer outreach, and we really pride ourselves on having some of the best customer support in the industry. So I spend much of my day just having conversation with customers on how their business is doing, how it's growing, where their pain points are, what we can do to support them, and so forth, which is really my favorite part of the day as well, is getting to problem solve with everybody. The rest of my day is filled with a lot of logistics. Where's the grain coming from? When's it coming in? Who's getting what when? Where do we all need to be? And that's another major part of the back end is the logistics. I would say the smallest but really prideful point for us is that we do a lot of education and community outreach as well. So when we do get those opportunities for speaking engagements, podcast interviews, things like that, we really enjoy doing that stuff and engaging with our greater community. So yeah, that's my typical day, is a mix of those things.
Okay. So the craft beer and distilling world is changing quickly. What emerging trends, whether it's grains or sustainable agriculture, are most shaping the direction of Blue Ox Malthouse right now?
So there's a lot of things going on in both of those worlds. And The kind of elephant in the room is that those industries are no longer experiencing breakneck growth like they have been over the past 10, 15 years. Depending on who you talk to, either the bubble is burst or the bubble is leveling out, but at the end of the day, we're not seeing the explosive growth that had been, experienced just a few years ago. So you're seeing both the brewers, the distillers, and the suppliers all kind of pivoting to try to figure out how to deal with this. So some of those trends that I'm seeing, and I think the best practices that are playing out are a focus on being focused, having an identity, one thing that you do really well, and kind of shrinking in the whole vision down to support that one game plan, vision, focus. I always say, I don't care who you think the best brewery in the world is and how you determine that success. That brewery got there off of one product. You think Guinness Stout, Budweiser's Lager, whoever it might be, Allagash White up here in the Northeast. So having that focused identity that we stay true to and kind of minimizing down to that seems to be one of those best practices and things I'm seeing breweries and suppliers doing across the board.
Okay. What is your one thing that you're focusing on?
For us at our malt house, we're
Yeah.
focused on really being the best quality malt that is out there. Our whole focus is making rural agricultural communities more economically sustainable. That's our mission statement, and we're doing that through servicing the beer and food and distilling industries. That's how we're supporting that. So because we're up against giant international players, we really have to be the best product that is out there. We can't have commodity of scale. We can't be the cheapest option out there. We don't have the farthest reach. We have to be the best that's out there. So we're really helping supply the local United States and Northeast with the best possible products they can get with a small, focused supply chain, easy access to these things, and a direct connection to those farms and the good that they're doing when they support the local infrastructure.
Sure. So if you're working hard to supply the best, how are you going about doing that?
So we have a lot of added quality checks in our supply process. We get what's called certificate of analysis for every single truckload of grain coming into our facility. We've got added quality checkpoints throughout our process, more than are going to be the industry standards. We also have internal testing and third-party testing of every single batch that happens. You'll find a lot of players, particularly larger players, are either going to generalize those for the whole year, for a certain crop, or for a style, whereas we're really staying on top of every single one with all of those added quality points so that nothing slips through the cracks. We also do a flavor test, go, no go, for every single batch, which isn't something that's common practice for most suppliers on that end. Another aspect is I mentioned that there's the old way and the new way of doing things. And doing it the old way, which is very labor intensive, it gives us a lot more human to product contact and interaction points where we can make a decision on the fly to change a batch one way or another to have that high consistency and quality. We like to think that it's really working for us. We won a lot of gold medals this year. We got best in show in the Malt Cup, and our customers have won a lot of gold and silver medals this year as well. So the proof really seems to be playing out.
Absolutely. Could you share a little bit about what is the old way versus the new way so we have an understanding of that?
Yeah. So the malting process happens in 3 steps. You have steeping, germination, and drying or kilning. And so what's going to happen is that we're taking the grain, usually it's barley that we're talking about, but you can really malt any cereal grain, oats, rye, wheat, whatever it might be. And the idea is that we want to start the germination process. And we all remember back in elementary school when we put like the lima beans in the Ziploc bag with the moist paper towel up in the window to learn how germination worked. So we're basically doing that all day long, every day with a bunch of little barley kernels. So we're getting them wet in that steeping process till they take on a certain amount of moisture. And we're going to see that little nubbin of a rootlet start to come out. That point in time, we're entering the germination step. And this is really, really differs from the old ways to the new ways. So for the germination step, we're literally just letting that barley grow. And it needs to be agitated every few hours because we don't want the rootlets to bind together and we really want to manage for temperature and moisture content. In the new pneumatic way of malting, a lot of this is either going to happen in these giant drums or these big boxes called Saladin boxes. And to the novice, a Saladin just looks like a giant stainless steel box, kind of shaped like a huge dumpster. And it's got a track system with augers on it that are constantly going back and forth, agitating it. Doing things the old way, it's called floor malting. And what we do is we're going to spread all of that germinated barley across the floor and literally lay it out on the floor. We'll put it in little piles and then we're going to spread it just like mulch until it's about 5 inches or so thick across the board. And then every couple of hours, we need to have a team member go in there with a rake and literally turn it over with, we call it a rake, but it's more of a plow. But they're going to walk through there and they're going to turn it over to regulate for that temperature and moisture by hand. So, regardless if you're using pneumatic malting or floor malting, that process is going to take a couple of days, at which time it's going to go into a kiln. And that's where the whole germination process will stop. We'll dry it out and kiln it to the appropriate color level we want. Now, how much we kiln is everything, from a very light colored beer to a very dark colored beer comes out of how much that kilning plays. For the non-maltster or beer drinker, you can think it kind of plays by coffee rules. So lighter roasts, darker roasts, same things apply.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that with us. I have a better understanding of that now. So you've clearly had a lot of success with uh, uh, Blue Ox Malthouse. What is one major milestone or achievement in the last 12 months or so that you're most proud of? And what do you think
So
was
I
the
think
key to
as the
success?
whole Yeah, I think for the whole team, it was in the Craft Malt Cup. We won Best in Show this past year. So we got a bunch of medals, and then we got Best in Show, which just really, after our massive expansion, just felt like a lot of things coming to fruition, and that was a whole team win.
Congratulations. That's exciting.
Thank you.
Sure. So every leader also faces challenges in growth. Where do you see the biggest bottleneck or challenge in scaling kind of now?
Yeah, so barley is a very competitive world out there. We deal with global commodity market. So where this gets really tricky is that the type of barley that can be used for the malting process to make beer is got the highest standards of quality and the most amount of inputs that go in for any barley crop out there. And globally, it's pretty much exclusively grown for the American craft brew market, which very much makes it a specialty crop. However, it gets lobbed into global commodities with feed grade and food grade barley, which really drives the price down. You've also got that there's areas other than the United States that are just naturally better environments for growing barley, such as Canada, Russia, Northern Europe, all have phenomenal growing climates for growing barley. So when we're trying to support barley and local beer and local whiskey here in the United States, it is really hard to find locally sourced barley, and the cost of it is generally going to be higher just because it's the specialty product. It's always going to be grown in rotation to support another crop in the United States. And our government and culture just hasn't put in the support for the infrastructure and that's needed to grow those types of grains opposed to other grains. United States is really good at growing corn and soy and things like that, and that's what our country is tooled to grow. So what that means at the end is that the consumer has a lot of very affordable, cheap options available to them that aren't going to necessarily support the farmer that's down the road for them. And you're seeing a lot of smaller and local suppliers suffering for it, which is ultimately narrowing down the options and the choice for the end consumer. In the craft beer world, everybody says they got into it to fight what beer was in the 70s, where it was all the same colored, yellow, fizzy, tasteless thing. And if we're not careful about how our sourcing works and our supply chains go, we could be forced into that similar situation again because we've eliminated a lot of the local suppliers. In Maine alone, we are down, I don't know, from like 30,000 acres to about 6,000 acres for malting quality barley. People just aren't growing it. So people need to support their local breweries. They need to support their local breweries that support local agriculture, because these things are going away.
Yeah, how do you navigate that significant challenge?
So a big challenge in the craft malt world is getting our customer to care about what this is. The joke in the industry we have is that the consumer always expects the beer to be cheap and consistent, good quality. So the brewer puts that on the maltster. The maltster puts it on the farmer, and then the farmer gets religious because they've got no one they can put it on. And so this expectation that beer needs to be cheap and high quality is out there, and that kind of drives the decision-making process across the board. What's the cheapest option that's out here? We've started doing a lot of education both to our customers and our customers' customers about what is the true cost of a pint and what are you paying for. Where we can break down the costs of the average cost of a pint, break it down and show how much money is making it back to the farm, and then comparing that to a crop like soy and saying, let's say that a barley farmer made soy profits. If you were to pay barley farmers a livable wage, a profitable value for that crop, when you amortize that all the way back up to the pint value, it's less than $1 difference that they're paying for the pint. So at the end, what's the difference between a cheaper, let's say $7 pint and a craft pint that supports local? That's an $8 pint. It's that strength of the local supply chain, the local agriculture. It just strengthens everything. And we're out there proving that local also means quality. You're not sacrificing anything by supporting local. I think for a while, local alone sold itself, but people have realized that local doesn't always mean quality. And that's why we have to be the best so people can support this, and all
Sure.
of this extra good comes from it.
Sure. So if you are trying to create the demand from the customer, how are you going about doing that?
So it's fully on engagement. We do speaking events with our customers for their customers. We do a lot of social media engagement. It's just getting out there. It needs to be a cultural shift across the board that we need to support our local food systems.
Sure. Okay.
And that's also dipping out of industry too. Whether it be needing conferences for bakers, talking to gardeners, it's just talking to everybody who will listen.
So if you're to kind of look down the road a little bit, where do you want to be in 6 or 12 months from now?
6 to 12 months from now, where would I like to be? I would like to see our growth trends continuing. We're coming off this massive expansion where we became the largest floor maltster outside of Europe. We've seen massive growth and massive support through that expansion, and we'd like to continue making a national play and reaching further and further out of the Northeast to help all of the United States have more of a localized supply chain, higher quality products, and just better beer all around.
If you could go back and give your younger self a piece of advice to set you up for success, what would it be?
Man, that's a tough one. Let's see. My first degree was a fine art degree, and I graduated right before the 2008 recession. So there's a lot of regrets on that end. I would say that the advice I would give myself is to stay as well-rounded and open-minded as I could be. We graduate high school thinking that we know all of the answers, and we're going off to college and we know exactly how our lives are going to go. Life just doesn't work that way. Staying open-minded and learning as many things as you can are going to come into play in your life and in your career in ways that you won't understand until it happens.
Well, thank you so much for sharing those insights. Before we wrap up, where can our listeners connect with you and learn more about Blue Ox Malthouse, Ian?
Yeah, so we're at blueoxmalthouse.com is our website, and we're also present on all of the social media platforms at Blue Ox Malthouse.
Thanks so much for joining us, Ian, and thank you for everybody for listening to the Growth Shift podcast.
Thank you.